Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're going to talk about something I think we all deal with, maybe more than we'd like to admit. That voice in your head that just won't quit. We're talking about overthinking.
So let me just ask you, does your mind ever feel like it's just spinning its wheels?
You know that feeling, right? That one worry, that one doubt, just playing over and over again like a broken record. Well, that's the heart of overthinking. And today we're going to dive into a really powerful, really ancient strategy to finally, hopefully, break that cycle. And our solution, you might be surprised to hear, comes from the world of pre-modern Japanese samurai. Yeah, these warriors had to become absolute masters of their own minds just to survive. I mean, just think about it for a second. There is zero room for hesitation in a sword fight. If an opponent is charging at you and you start thinking, oh man, is his sword sharper than mine? Should I block high? Should I block low? That tiny moment of distraction, that's the difference between life and death. So to get to that peak level of performance, they borrowed this incredible concept from Zen Buddhism called Mushin. It literally means mind without mind. It's a state where you're so in the zone, your actions just flow, totally free from all that mental clutter, the fear, the ego, the constant analysis. It was basically their ultimate mental armor. Okay, so how do we even begin to get to a state like Mushin? Well, the very first step is to get your head around a really subtle but super critical difference. The difference between having a thought and the act of thinking. See, a thought, it's just like a cloud floating by in the sky. It shows up, it hangs out for a second, and then it's gone. It's a noun. It's just a thing. But thinking? That's a verb. That's an action. That's when we grab onto that cloud, we poke it, we analyze it, we judge it, and before you know it, we've started a whole storm. That action creates momentum, and that momentum can turn into a really nasty downward spiral. A simple, harmless thought like, I have a big presentation tomorrow, can kick off a thinking spiral like, oh my God, what if I forget my words? What if they think my ideas are dumb? I'm gonna get fired. So the first big win is just learning to spot when a simple thought has turned into that negative cycle of thinking. You know, this whole idea of us creating our own negative momentum, it's captured perfectly in this famous Buddhist parable. It's all about how we accidentally end up creating most of our own suffering. So the story goes like this. When something bad happens in life, it's like we get hit by two arrows. The first arrow is the event itself. You know, you get some bad news, you make a mistake at work. It hurts, and a lot of the time it's totally out of our control. But the second arrow, that's the one we shoot at ourselves. It's our reaction. It's the blame, the shame, the endless what-ifs. And that's the whole point. First arrows are just a part of being alive. We can't dodge all of them, but that second arrow, the one that causes almost all of the long-term suffering, that one is completely optional. By just learning to see things as they are without immediately piling on a negative story, we learn how to put the bow and arrow down. Okay, that's great in theory, but what if the second arrow is already flying? What do you do when your mind is already a total storm of negativity and that momentum is in full swing? Let me ask you this. If I gave you a glass bowl full of water with a bunch of dirt and mud swirling around inside and said, okay, make it clear, what would you do? I bet for most of us, the first instinct is to do something, right? You'd probably want to stick your hand in there and try to grab the dirt, or maybe stir it really fast, or try to filter it somehow. Our instinct when we're stressed is to take action. But here's the thing. The most effective solution, by far, is to do nothing. Just set the bowl down on a table and walk away. Be still. Because if you do, the mud will naturally, on its own, settle to the bottom, and the water will become clear. And our minds work the exact same way. Instead of fighting with our negative thoughts, which just stirs up more mud, the wisdom of stillness says to just let them be. Don't engage. Let the sediment of your mind settle. This whole idea of letting go and not trying to force everything, it can also completely change how we go after our goals and even how we think about happiness itself. So often, we set what you could call desperation goals. They're all conditional. They sound like, I'll finally be happy when I get that new job. Or, I have to get this promotion to feel successful. It's all about pressure. The alternative is to set inspirational goals. These are all about the process. So instead of, I must lose 10 pounds, it becomes, I'm going for a run because it feels good to move my body. The focus shifts from a desperate outcome to enjoying the journey. And that is the absolute core of it. Goals aren't bad. The problem is when we make our happiness a hostage to some future event. When you can find joy in the process,
in the doing, then you found a way to be happy right now, no conditions attached.
All right, for this last piece of the puzzle, I want to tell you a quick story that shows just how powerful our minds are at building prisons that don't even exist. And it comes from the great Houdini. Now, Houdini was the master of escape, right? He could get out of anything. But one day, he took on a challenge to escape from this supposedly foolproof, high-tech jail cell. And this time, something was different. He works at the lock for 2 solid hours. He tried every trick he knew, and nothing was working. He started to panic. His mind started spiraling. He was drenched in sweat, thinking, this is it, my career is over, I'm a fraud. He was overthinking, totally convinced that he had finally met his match. Finally, totally exhausted and defeated, he just gave up. He slumped against the big, heavy steel door, ready to admit failure. And in that one moment of complete surrender,
The door swung open. It hadn't been locked the entire time. This story is just such a perfect illustration of everything we've talked about. The only thing that was keeping the great Houdini trapped was the lock that he had built up in his own mind.
So, the principle of Mushin, the wisdom of the 2 arrows, the stillness of the muddy water, it all leads to one final, powerful question for you to take with you. What doors in your own life only seem locked simply because you've decided that they are?